Hello, I'm Dominic Davies, founder of Pink Therapy. We've been training mental health specialists worldwide to work with gender, sex, and relationship diverse clients for many years. This podcast puts the lives of some of these incredible, pioneering therapists front and center and gives us insights into what it's like to be LGBTIQA+, or as we prefer, GSRD, speaking in their words. Welcome, everybody. I'm joined today by Karen Pollock, who is a graduate of our 2-year program and now an associate lecturer with Pink Therapy. So tell us, Karen, your pronouns and where you are in the world.
It's wonderful to be here. My pronouns are they, them, or their, and I'm in rather chilly this morning, Northumberland, which is in the northeast of England.
And tell us a bit about your work. Are you online? Are you in person? Are you just only working with GSRD?
So I'm a therapist in private practice and a supervisor, and I should say a lecturer, so I do training. In my client work, I'm majority online, but I also do outdoor therapy, which I absolutely adore. It takes advantage of, I live in one of the most beautiful places you could ever imagine. And for so many people, the therapeutic space has been quite traumatic. So the difference of, sitting by a stream under some trees and no walls, just the world around you is quite incredible. But obviously there's so many privileges in being able to access that. So I'd say 80% of my work is online, and 80 to 90% of my clients are GSRD.
Wow, that's a lot. So that's showing that there's a very large rural population as well coming to do some of this in-person or walk therapy.
Or people who are willing to travel for the right therapy, which I think is also something we often don't think about. I get clients, I think the furthest someone's travelled for outdoor therapy was 70 miles each way because they knew it was right for them.
That's
obviously
nice.
Day to day I'm doing much more online, but if anyone hears this and goes, what, GSRD folk like being outside? Yes, they do. They really benefit from it. Find out about it, get some training.
Oh, for sure.
Because the community really needs this.
Hiking dikes and the Gay Outdoor Club and social organisations like that love to get people out into the wilderness, or on the hills at least. So tell me a little bit about what projects you might be working on at the moment. What's new or big or exciting in your life?
Oh, that's such a good question, because it's actually something I've been thinking about a lot myself. I kind of thought this period of my life would be like the high summer, sort of sit on my laurels a bit. We got the sex work course out there. I've got a book chapter coming out. I thought, the change I wanted to see is happening. Maybe I could just sit in the sunshine for a bit. But the world decided it didn't really agree. And since I became a supervisor, I've been, if I say horrified, that's probably a bit strong, but shocked. I wanted to be a supervisor. I knew how much my queer supervisors had informed my practice, how much your mentorship had. I was expecting people just looking for that kind of understanding space. And what I'm getting instead is people encountering direct homophobia, transphobia, biphobia from supervisors. The sort of stuff we know clients get from therapists, but I thought these people with additional training. So maybe I was naive, and I've been accused before of, I look at the world in rose-tinted spectacles. So what I'm really being moved to at the moment, and I've got a few pieces of writing, is writing about queer supervision. I really want to have a sit down with you about the GSRD modality, because I think queer supervision is part of that, and what do queer supervisors need? I don't know what I'll do with it. There may be blogs, there may be articles I try to get published. There may be a book. but there was so little out there about why do queer therapists need queer supervisors.
And why do straight therapists need queer supervisors if they're working with queer clients?
Yes, the other side of the coin, which I'm sure you've encountered way more than I have. It's at the minute it is just queer therapists coming to find me.
Okay.
But does that mean that cis het therapists are working with clients without that oversight?
Of course, yeah, and without perhaps ever any training too, because the training wasn't there, or they haven't chosen yet to take it up, but they're still feeling competent to do the work.
Both have the same blind spot. How do you even know it's a blind spot?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So
yeah,
it's.
So you're getting caught up and enthused by the need for training supervisors and helping supervisees access queer supervision.
And what does queer supervision mean? You know, like, you know, the conference is coming up, and I know I'll see my supervisor there, and it'll be wonderful. But I also know that for some people, it's still like, we're meant to be in ivory towers and never actually meet another counsellor. And it's GSRD or kinky or non-monogamous or all of the above folk. That's not the world we live in.
No. So we're back into my specialist subject, living and working with the community. And how we manage those boundaries, because you're quite right that we, you know, as therapists, we'll go to the conference and I've got supervisees in the room. I've got several supervisees in the room. And so I would hope to, actually, because I would hate them to stay away because I was there and that we couldn't be in the same space. It's super important that they get access to as much as possible. But it does raise an issue of how do we get perceived? Are we seen as distant or above or beyond? Which, you know, I think is a super unhelpful way of viewing it. We're doing the same work as them, that we may have just been doing it a bit longer.
And part of my stance is anti-oppressive, which is really about, you know, dismantling hierarchies, looking at structural oppressions and how they impact all of us, but different people in different ways. And if you've got that power imbalance or even perceived power imbalance, then it's going to play out, whether it's in therapy or supervision. So it's not what I thought it'd be, but it's really interesting. And it is, as you say, it's firing passions in me for, okay, where's this going to go?
Well, I wish you luck with it. I know that Daniel Pollock has written a chapter for us in the Relationally Queer textbook that Silva and I have just finished editing and have last week sent to the publishers to put into print. So that's going to be exciting. That'll come out next year. And Daniel's very interested he's kind of developing a model of supervision, so he'd be a good person to talk to.
Oh, yes.
But there's also, I mean, over the years, I've tried to put on workshops for supervisors in GSRD therapy to try to help them understand some of these. They weren't interested in general in coming, even if we called it advanced information or advanced skills for supervisors, you know, like pandering to egos about, this isn't basic stuff. This is the really complicated. This is the complicated stuff that you need to know about. I wasn't getting much joy in it then. And that was, 10, 15 years ago. So I hope that the climate will have changed and the culture is now more accepting of GSRD and recognising it as a thing and that people need some training in. So hopefully, supervisors will be open to recognising this gap in their knowledge.
And it all goes back to what's best for our clients. Because if we have genuinely sort of compassionate challenge in our supervision, then we go back to our clients, giving them the best therapy possible. Whereas if those blind spots, those areas that we don't even know we need challenge, they aren't going to get the best from us.
Sure.
So in some ways, it's really basic.
Well, yeah, and it's learning. I mean, we can't all be culturally sensitive about every group and identity because there's too many, but we can try. And while we're doing that, we can learn the theories and skills about being culturally humble and use cultural humility to engage with people who are unlike us in a respectful way.
I think that's one of the things that so often being vulnerable is hard. It's always hard. And to say to people, it's okay to admit the vulnerability of not knowing or having a prejudice or an ignorance or a gap that needs to be filled in your knowledge. But so often people look at that vulnerability and go, oh, no. I'm not showing that, whether it's in a training course or in a magazine article or any other place. So they cover it up by building this very, I am certain, there are these certainties and I stand upon them rather than maybe.
Yeah, well, it's hard when everyone looks to you for the answers and then you think, I've got to know, I'm supposed to know. I don't know where I've picked up all these answers. But yes, there is pressure, I think, on supervisors for more than they sometimes are able to deliver. But a better understanding about our communities and our lives is something that is achievable. And good luck. Tell me a little bit about what life is like for GSRD folk where you live, because you're in rural northeast England. I always think everybody just exits those areas and goes off to Manchester or Leeds or London, but not everybody does.
There is, I was talking with a colleague about this recently. There is a gap, I think, generally in that. I live in a very, very nice sort of middle to upper middle class bit of Northumberland. So, I'm not talking about the old mining villages and stuff, but everyone does what I did many years ago. I was on that first train to London at 18, rucksack on my back. Definitely not looking back. And then you get people sort of 50 upwards. This sort of usually appearing heteronormative in that, married, because how are you going to afford a house if there isn't two incomes? But, that we shouldn't always judge by appearances. So there's the young people who are often very isolated, regardless maybe of economic privilege or other privileges. And then the older people, because they can then afford to buy that nice house in the country, which I think is even a BBC TV show, isn't it? And very little in between.
Right.
But even with sort of, yes, we've got the lovely cottage fulfilling the dream, there's a lot of isolation. Newcastle has a very good and thriving GSRD scene, brilliant community groups. Even our local Pride is, I know people like to complain about some prides, but Northern Pride is just wonderfully intersectional and really gets, the local trans group B led out the Pride with this 50 strong thing, as given the state of things in England should be happening. But what do you do when there isn't a bus after 8 o'clock at night? Or what do you do when, especially for young people, if you want to go to something, you might have to sort of lie to the parents or, not wear clothing appropriate to your gender because who might see you on the train or the bus? So lots of isolation, quite a bit of reliance on the internet, and which isn't to dismiss the really good groups that there are, but it's one big city, like a bit of a black hole that sucks everything in.
Right. Thank you. And what would you say are some of the current challenges facing your community and your clients?
Turf Island, literally. I said something before, but I imagine this would be my kind of high summer, sort of sitting in the sunshine, not really doing very much. That partly personal, but partly because two great ambitions of my life have been achieved. Right now, I'm genuinely scared, particularly for trans femme and trans women in the UK. We are in a moment I don't recognise. And I came out first in 1983 or 4. Can't do maths. 14 and came out as a lesbian. And it was hostile. And there was gay bashing. And, literally one of my friends, I'll never forget, told me, well, you've got to go to London. You can't stay up here. And they meant that lovingly, like, what are you going to do up here?
Sure.
But the hostility and the level of hostility, particularly in the media, there's a level of hate at the moment in the UK. I think it was summed up for me on Facebook. Someone was saying, what's England like in the winter? I'm thinking of doing a winter holiday. They were trans. And person after person underneath who was trans was going, don't come to England. Now, working with clients, sometimes I might challenge, well, are you personally safe? What are your other privileges? Because whiteness is huge, age, other things. But not everyone has a therapist they can turn to and work this through. Not everyone does have those privileges that protect them. And I think a lot of people are feeling really unsafe, really worried about the future, particularly with the current government. Our Prime Minister doesn't believe trans women are women, doesn't believe trans men are men, and that's our Prime Minister. And of course it trickles down. LGBT hate crime is on the rise. Anyone who doesn't conform, cishet women who happen to look a bit butch are being challenged just wanting to use the toilet or go into a changing room.
Sure.
And people, people like butch lesbians are being targeted because it's assumed that they're trans. So the community is facing a lot of systemic violence right now.
It's appalling and absolutely terrifying, I think. If I try to imagine myself as a young queer person who's gender non-conforming or who's trans, in my teens thinking about coming out, I've perhaps got more peer support than I would have ever done at other points in history. And yet, apart from that peer support and potentially some parental support, depending on how privileged you are with your parents, the society, pick up a newspaper, turn on the television, they're so othering and hostile. It's just terrifying. Really needing to rely on the support of my tribe, on my community, to counteract that absolute wall of irrational, misjudged, misguided lies and hatred.
I mean, just this week, the Telegraph, one of their supposedly, high-minded in terms of, well, a serious newspaper, did a diatribe about basically what's a sports bra. Binders are a little bit more complex sports bra. And if you showed a serious competitive athlete, a binder and a sport, and one of, those 200-pound sports bras you get for people who, do marathons and stuff, they would be like, pretty much the same thing, aren't they? Yes. Yeah, and they are literally trying to get a very good support charity to close down because they talked to a supposed 14-year-old who was, it was a sting operation, about sports bras. And I do have to say, though, because you mentioned, that queer young person coming out now. The queer young people I encounter either working, I don't work with under 18s, but work 18 upwards, or just in my daily life are incredible. They're taking no shit. And I'm just in awe because I just think actually for 20 years or so, we didn't have this level of structural violence against us. And these guys are just going, yeah, bring it on, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me on a personal level, what are you passionate about? What are some of the things that light your fire?
Oh, goodness, right. How long have we got? How do we build a better world on so many levels? One of the biggest things impacting GSRD folk at the minute in the UK, because they're poorer, is the energy crisis. If someone can't heat their house, then that's...
Yeah.
So just how do we build a better world, and what does that world look like? How do we hear the voices of those who don't normally get heard? And how do we make sure that it's always that thing of, okay, who's not in this room? And not, oh, well, they should have come, but what do I do to make sure that they're in here?
So you're passionate about disadvantage, about marginalised communities, about those who don't have the opportunities or the privileges that others have.
And what can I personally do? Because I've never been a one for, oh, well, like, yes, that's terrible, let me sign a petition. Say, okay, what? It's like would have been around a month ago, spoke to all of my clients about the energy crisis, about if you need to reduce your number of sessions, reminding them I work with a sliding scale. I don't want anyone to be going out and choosing between therapy or being able to be warm. Because to me, it's always about, okay, what can I do that makes a difference? Not all day, every day, because that would be quite exhausting. But I have to feel I'm making a difference. And I suppose that's partly what got me from growing up in a very poor part of Newcastle to where I am now. Because it was okay, this situation seems unjust. How do I change it?
Okay. Turning to the training program, to the Pink Therapy training program, what motivated you to undertake the program?
Oh, goodness. I just remember my excitement when I saw it. I may have gone, I have to do that. I know this isn't a unique experience. This isn't a woe is me at all, but I did a very good PG dip. It was brilliant. It had great tutors, and it had a unit on abuse, which I think should be mandatory and so often isn't. But, you knew there was a but. I never felt I brought my full self. I didn't feel I could bring my neurodiversity. I didn't think I could bring my life history and lived experience. And when I did, very gently, I wouldn't even say bring my queerness, but sort of the fact I identify as bi is kind of easy word for the straights to understand. I felt instantly like othered and not part of the group. And as we went through that course, getting all these people saying, this has been wonderful. I've grown so much. I've explored so much. And I had grown and explored, but I knew something was missing. And the minute I saw that there was a course that was going to be learning, yes, about GSRD people, but led by and for and with GSRD peers studying alongside me, I thought maybe I could get what other people clearly got from that qualification.
Did you?
Oh, yes, so much.
I had to ask.
No, it's terrible.
No, and it was such a disappointment. Well, you stuck with it for 2 years.
He was just so normative. It was, I got it. It more than I expected. And even if, I don't want this to sound like an advert, I'm actually feeling quite emotional now, but even if you never intend to work with GSRD folk, I don't know, say you work with 5-year-olds, and I know obviously they can be GSRD 5-year-olds, you work with 5-year-olds in a children's hospital doing play therapy, but you're a queer person, I'd recommend doing the course. Because the growth and the ability to be myself and to be accepted and to bring my full self, I'd never experienced it before in any training situation.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think every time I run the intensive with Agatha and Antonio, I feel like this is so good. This is such good personal development that we ought to be putting this on more times a year, really. Just that 2 weeks, because of the content and the growth and the awareness raising. But it would be too expensive. It's the 2 weeks is subsidised by the rest of the course fees. But I'm not opening the course up to people who aren't wanting to be specialist therapists, because we don't have the space to take in all those other people that you're just saying, yeah, you would benefit from this. It's amazing.
But they can get a little bit of that at the conference. I know we were talking before you started recording. One of the reasons I and so many other people love the conference is it's a coming home. It's like, I'm not a minority in this room. How fucking good is that?
Yeah, the pink therapy familia get to meet each other. Yes. What was the most interesting part, if there was one, or of the training for you? What did you appreciate the most?
I think what I appreciated the most was the combination of personal exploration and theoretical knowledge. So, it's very easy to be, well, it's not very easy, good training's hard, but touchy-feely personal exploration is a lot of people's bag. And actually there's some academic rigor here, and you've got to do some work. And I think what I appreciated, that they were balanced. So yes, I mean, the personal growth, the development, the understanding myself, really wonderful. But it was balanced alongside learning about the communities I'm working with, the communities I'm members of, different techniques, theories around the why, which inform daily the how of therapy. And I really think the balance was good, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah, I think that's the motivating driver that propels our queer students on every month when they've got to do another 2,000-word assignment. The eight every month they're writing an essay, whereas the other counselling courses, it's like, I might have an essay a year or one every term. Like, ours are doing it every month. And getting up at odd hours to, if they're in different parts of the world, to study with us. That energy, that driving fuel, I think comes from, this is about me. I'm learning about my life, my tribe, my people. at a personal level as well as an intellectual level. Like I'm engaging with, I'm being fed research. I'm meeting people like me. I am growing. This is so the person of the therapist and the therapist kind of are in sync.
Something I wasn't expecting, though, just saying about that getting up at odd times, which I really appreciated and didn't realise, because you don't know who else can be in it, of course, meeting people from all around the world and how they practice and learning about different approaches, because, you know, there is more than one way to do therapy and counselling. There's more than one way to train. So that genuine diversity of experience. I'll never forget being in it was a case discussion group, you know, and there was one person in Italy, one person who's of Chinese background, but was in California, and me. And where else would I be connecting with such different? But we were all friends. We were all colleagues, peers, and we were all therapists, just bringing our experience. I'll never forget that evening. It was...
Yeah, those kind of cultural connections and intersections I love. That's one of the reasons why I love this course being international, that we learn so much from each other and how queerness and queer therapy can be practiced and lived around the world in a range of different contexts. Okay. How has it changed your practice?
I think you've known me long enough to know I struggle with imposter syndrome. It's given me the confidence that I really needed. It's not that the imposter syndrome is completely gone. The course is, because it gave me that knowledge personally and theoretically to go, okay, maybe I do know a bit about this. So yeah,
you've studied this stuff,
and of course, because it's increased my confidence, then I can be more authentic, more vulnerable, but also have now a huge library of knowledge and expertise that if a client needs signposting or psychoeducation, but then that all comes back to confidence, you know, because my heart's person-centered, so it's quite a lot to offer. Oh, have you heard about this? But I've got this huge library now, and when something comes up, the confidence to use it. One without the other is not much use.
Yeah. I mean, to have all that knowledge from all those resources, and then just sit on your hands and say, "Well, I'll wait for you to find out on your own. It's not for me to tell you your journey or to help you on your journey. I'll just sit here and wait for you to discover it."
I will emote empathically with a head tilt to see if that works.
Okay, so recommend me a book or a film, because I continue to learn from my students as much as I think I do anything about imparting information and knowledge.
Ooh, that's such a good question. Gonna go slightly mainstream, but I'm loving it at the moment. Have you watched A League of Their Own?
I don't think I have. No. What's this about?
So it's an Amazon TV series about in World War II in America, because all the men were off fighting, they set up women's baseball.
Oh, yeah.
And so you follow a women's baseball team from like the formation through to, no spoilers, but you know, it's kind of like got a nice happy arc.
Okay.
Obviously, women of colour weren't allowed to play on that team. So there's a sort of
Racial
separate
stuff,
side
right?
story about a black woman. But it is the most wonderfully sapphic, glorious celebration of queer women you have ever seen. There's a moment when basically half the team realise the other half is queer, and they're all like, there is a lot of playing with gender, because it's in that era where there wasn't a split between So there's non-binary players, there's butch players, there's high femme players. And the male gaze is completely absent.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a celebration of women and AFAB, people who love women, done as a sports thing. So, you get that.
That's a good,
Will
that's
they,
a
won't
great
they win this
suggestion.
game?
That's a great suggestion. Okay. So as a bona fide fairy, I'm allowed to grant wishes. And I'm going to give you 3 wishes. What are you going to wish for?
It's the cheat of unlimited wishes.
No, that's not on the table.
Okay, you were stern fairy. I think the first one would put us both out of a job. But if everyone could see that their children were not possessions, extensions of themselves, ways to sort through their own trauma, but these wonderful human beings they had the privilege of spending time with for 18 or so years, we'd both be unemployed, but a hell of a lot of trauma would be removed from the world.
Okay.
My second wish, it's going to be avowedly political, and screw it if people think therapists shouldn't be.
Oh, I think people have cottoned on that you're a politically motivated therapist. Yes.
Somehow the downfall of this government by the end of the week. Right now, really don't care who replaces them. I just, a revolution tomorrow. Thank you very much. And
okay.
then because, don't need to worry about the state of the country anymore, and people are being happier in their thing. An art studio where I can just lock myself in and do art painting. Oh, an unlimited supply of art. That's not an extra wish. It's a magic art studio. It's all one wish. And then just spend my days doing art paintings and being very, very happy.
Lovely. I'm glad you came. You got one in for you personally as well. I was thinking unlimited ice cream, but art studio sounds great. Yes. Yeah.
I get brain freeze with ice cream. It's really upsetting because it's lovely.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for coming on the podcast, sharing your world with us. And I am enthusiastically interested in seeing how your plans to help supervisors focus on expanding their understanding. I think that would be a really wonderful thing to be seeing. Yeah.
Awesome.
Take care.
Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Please click like and subscribe to hear when the next one is released. If you're a therapist looking to enhance your knowledge and skills with GSRD clients, please check out our training website, pinktherapy.org. We run 1- and 2-year specialist training programs online, as well as offer a wide range of short CPD modules. Thanks again for listening to On Becoming a GSRD Therapist.